Welcome to Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. We ask that you show our support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to both our YouTube channel and our Facebook pages. We also want to thank all of those of you who are already following us and watching our videos. We do truly appreciate each and every one of you. Autumn, welcome to the show. I love your jean jacket. You're all 80s looking today with your big earrings and...
I did that for you for the TikTok. She shared with me making the 80s style. My hair just did not want to cooperate and be big.
Hey, well, it's getting there. You got the big bangs anyway. It's a good start.
I'm trying.
And we are branching outside of the house of Yahweh again today, and we are excited to introduce our guest today, Denise Taylor, who was part of the Laestadianism religion up until about a year ago. And I want to give you props, Denise, for having the courage to step forward and share your story, especially being so newly out of your cult. We welcome you to the show, and we're very grateful for you for entrusting us to help you speak your truths today.
Thank you, guys.
Did I say the name of the cult right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Laestadianism. Okay.
Yeah, Laestadianism.
All right, Denise, we're just a couple of girls having a conversation. If you get nervous or anything, remember you at any point can change topics. We can talk about something else or whatever. We're just a bunch of girls sitting around.
That's
just
right.
Think about that.
You
okay?
can skip a question if you don't like it. Just say skip that question and we'll move right on.
Okay. All right. How and when did you join the Laestadian Lutheran Church?
Okay, well, my parents divorced when I was 11, and my dad met somebody who was inside of that religion when I was 12. And so I was expected to go. It took a little time for like the indoctrination process, and I was kind of like rewarded for going too. And also cut off from my worldly friends. So if I was going to have friends, they had to be there. So I quickly found myself some because I wasn't about to be friendless or lacking of friends. I still did have my worldly friends, but they were limited, very limited, very limited. So that's why I ended up there.
Gotcha.
So, Denise, can you explain to us some of the more extreme teachings that your group had that differ from mainstream religions?
Okay, so this kind of would be like what I would say when people say, well, how do you know it's a cult? So what happens is they isolate you. There's the black and white, like us versus them. We are considered the only ones who are living Christians, so we would be the only ones who are allowed to be saved. We'd be the only ones who'd be going to heaven. The rest of everybody else is going to hell. One of the ones that particularly bothers me is the fact, like we've talked before, the fact that women are considered responsible for men's sexual desires. So it's important for us to cover from, head to toe as much as you can without following any kind of fashion, because we don't want to entice anybody to do stuff.
Well, hold on. You mean, let me just clarify this if you don't mind.
Yep, I don't
so
mind.
What you're saying, this is just from adult to adult. This doesn't include a teenager to an adult, does it?
Oh, yes, it does, because two of my children were in confirmation, and we had, so when the kids are being taught this sex education, they separate boys and girls, and the girls are taught by females at that point, because typically females don't teach anything in the cult at all. The only place they're ever in charge of anything would be in the kitchen. So otherwise, we're never in charge of anything. But when it comes to sex education for the girls, it's got to be women. So it happened to be, I know it's a very tiny, the congregation I belong to is very tiny. So we know everybody. Well, we were working in the kitchen, and the mom came out that had been doing the education, and the other moms were asking, well, what exactly do you teach? Because surprising, we don't know, right? So she happened to tell us, and she said that they teach the girls that they need to be modestly dressed, not showing any cleavage, nothing above the knee. You're not allowed to show your shoulders, because men, this is her words, men are born with testosterone and they cannot control themselves. That was her exact words. So I'm a sexual assault survivor, a sexual abuse survivor, a rape survivor, and I immediately just went off. I literally had to run out of the building, go to my car, call my husband, and just vent because I was losing it. It really was triggering for me. And then later when we got in the car, my daughter and my son were talking to me about it. And my daughter said, so does that mean that when the preachers are on the bench that they're looking at me sexually?
Wow.
And how old was your daughter at this time?
She would have been 14.
Wow.
So, and basically that was the message, is that every man is experiencing that. So your dad, your brother, your uncle, the preacher, your Sunday school teacher, everybody, right?
Yeah.
Across the board.
Yeah.
There's no exception to that rule.
Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it, Autumn? A little too familiar. Well, how old was your son at that time, Denise? Was he about the same age?
He was a couple years older.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he was basically receiving the same message, that he was not responsible for his own thoughts and actions, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Wait, hold on, stop. I'm sorry, Mel.
No, do it.
So they told your son, it's okay if you have sexual thoughts because it's her fault because you cannot control your body.
Correct. That's the message, that men are born with testosterone, which makes them desire it, and they cannot control that desire. So it's our responsibility to make sure they don't desire it. That's exactly the message, word for word. So yes, my son was taught that he has no control over his desire to want sex.
And I have a question. Did you correct that with both of them?
We had a very long talk.
Okay.
Like the trip back to my house is probably a good hour and a half, depending on traffic and such. And we had a very long talk. And I'm so grateful that my kids are so open-minded and they're so free-minded. That would be considered a major sin in the church.
Right.
But I'm so grateful that they have the concepts of like, this is ridiculous and disgusting.
Right.
So yeah, we had a very long talk.
So because this is just what I typed up, just to clarify this for anybody watching, women also have some testosterone. So in that case, important, the way that they think, I can look at anybody and sexualize anybody then because I got testosterone too.
Right. I mean, right?
Well, that seems logical, doesn't it?
I mean, it does, I guess, if you know science, but
Yeah.
they're not going by science here.
I'm sorry, Denise. Denise, did you witness or experience any type of abuse while you were part of the Skulls?
So two things I would bring up is that I've seen sexual abuse go under the table a lot, because it's when anything major happens, we are taught to go to the preachers first. And the preachers will very carefully tell you that things need to stay under the table, because if they don't, they're going to end up, with officials in there looking at them, questioning them. Like we don't want to upset the apple cart. We don't want to let the devil in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's what's taught. So
that everything needs to be handled internally. Don't rock the boat and get the outside world involved.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Like 100% correct. So I personally experienced sexual abuse, like I said, actually a rape. The person who it happened with was outside of our cult, surprisingly. But it doesn't matter per se, because I was still blamed for that. Because I'm the woman, I had the responsibility. Also, I'd like to mention that I was like 16. But that was my responsibility, my burden to carry, my sin to ask forgiveness for. And so I was expected to actually make, not just to ask forgiveness, because they do active forgiveness like every time they meet, but a repentance, which is like actually getting in front of the congregation and telling your sin and asking for it to be forgiven.
So this was made public. Your abuse, your rape was made public to the whole congregation, and you were made to take responsibility for it. Correct?
Yeah.
Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, you're correct. Like they didn't go into detail or anything about what specifically happened, but yes, I was expected to stand in front of those people and say, I committed a sin and I want you to forgive, all of you to forgive me for it so I can go to heaven.
And you since realized that's a load of crap, right?
Yeah, it took me a long time, I'll be really honest, because I didn't really start separating myself until 2015. I didn't get out yet, I was still in, but I saw a therapist in 2016, and she said to me, I was like in my 40s already, and she said, you know, it's not your fault, right? And I was like, no, I didn't know that. I just like said to her, can you say it again? And she did. She's like, it's not your fault. And I just like was blown away by it. Wow. And then the anger came. I was just, this inner anger just like rose up in me, and I just.
Well, you had lived with that guilt and that responsibility for 30 years. I would be pissed too.
And I still like blamed myself like daily for that. Shamed myself daily for falling into a sin like that.
I have another. I mean, I don't know how much the answer to this question matters or not, but I'm just kind of curious. Did your abuser know anything about your religion or what you were being taught? Did he know that you would be a target because of that? I'm just curious if he had inside information about what you were being told.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it was just really a predatory action on his part.
Okay.
And I don't think it had was in relation to how they knew it was gonna he'd get away with it.
Yeah, I just wondered. Yeah, I kind of wondered if he knew that you were what you were being taught, or knew something about your religion and thought, oh, I can take advantage of this.
I guess he knew some, but I had not thought of that as a reason why he would continue.
I just wondered if he targeted you, and I don't know that, possibly. And maybe you don't know that. I just wonder if he knew something about your religion, if he took advantage of that.
That's really, really interesting now that you say that, because I to be honest, I'm not really sure, because he did obviously know something about it,
right?
Because we were connected in a way, which I'd rather not share, but we were connected in a way, so he would know something. So I mean, it's a possibility.
Right.
But I just always thought, since my therapy, I guess I'll say, since my therapy, I've viewed it as more of it was just predatory, and I just happened to be in the way.
And I absolutely think it is predatory, but it may have been even more pre-thought out than what you thought. And I don't know that. I'm just speculating that.
Yeah.
What was your relationship before? I got a two-part question.
Okay.
What was your relationship with your father and your stepmother prior to? From what I'm understanding, Denise, it wasn't just a one-time rape. It was a multiple overtime rape. Okay. So what was your relationship with your father and your stepmother prior to this predator, and that's exactly what he is. He is a predator. He scoped you out. What was your relationship before, during, and then after?
Well, before, I mean, I thought I had a good relationship with my dad. However, he wasn't there a lot, before he met my stepmother. And then when he met my stepmother, of course, he was there more because he wasn't out dating and trying to find somebody. However, my stepmother was a narcissistic abuser in every sense of the way. And I'm not saying it just to be trendy. I don't know, like some people like, oh, they're abuser and they're narcissist. No, like she truly is. And I didn't know that, of course, until I was much, much older and more recently. So I was starting to be abused, and I didn't, by her, and I didn't know that was a thing. Like I had no clue that other people hurt people, and that just didn't exist in our family, like at least not to me. And so it was like shocking and like caught me off guard and kind of like knocked me off my feet. And because I think I was so young, she was able to really implement her skills like easily, because I'm just learning. I'm just a kid, I was like 12 years old. But,
do you know if anybody also, I'm sorry, go ahead. I just have a quick question about that, and I don't want to forget.
Sure. I'll just say one quick thing, that also she quickly like conquered and divided my core, like my nuclear family, where I had an older brother and sister from my mom and dad mutually, and quickly cut us apart so that I was alone.
Right. And I'm sure that was strategic.
Mm-hmm. Which we just actually came up with that. Like,
so this is a new revelation. Believe me, you're going to keep having revelations. After you leave, there's years of revelations where you're like, oh, that was on purpose. That was thought out. That was pre-thought. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how you do that. But my question about that was, do you know if anybody in the organization knew that your stepmother was abusive? And if so, did anybody say or try to do anything about that? Or do you think they were unaware of it?
I think they were quite well aware of it, especially her family. I mean, my dad, for shit's sakes, what I mean?
Right.
I laugh, but I think it's more like nervous laugh that my own parent wasn't protecting me.
Right.
I mean, it was
obvious. So it was tolerated or encouraged, or just everybody ignored it?
I just feel like, I definitely tolerated. I don't know if I would say anybody encouraged it. I would say it was tolerated, and I don't know if anybody really knew how to deal with it. Yeah.
And probably the extent, because from what I'm gathering, she was mentally and emotionally abusive to you, correct?
Yes.
So let me ask you this question. Did she act the same way towards you when it was just you and her? And then did she also act that same way when it was you, her, and your dad?
She was pretty consistent. She didn't really care who was around. Although she did separate me a couple times, because one time I got mouthy back and she smacked me across the face and gave me a fat lip. And the school caught on. And I just told them what happened, honestly. And
good for you.
Yeah, they, of course, set up an intervention with Child Protective Services, who then, I was in trouble then. Because she was called on her bullshit, and she quickly secluded me and basically threatened my life and said if I ever did it again, well then, and made sure I was somewhere I couldn't get away. I was in a car with her. So she would do that a couple times, if it was over the top, I think, things she wanted to threaten me with, but possibly didn't want somebody else to hear it, so she'd seclude me that way. But most of the time she was very out and just did it in front of everybody.
So Denise, basically with the way that she was, and that your father wasn't your protector, and then this predator came along, to you his behavior was probably normal, and your self-esteem and your self-own value and worth at this time was probably so broken that you knew you were different. And who were you to turn to in your mind?
Mm-hmm. And he groomed me.
Who did you turn to?
Right? He groomed me.
Right.
So,
and that's key.
Yes.
And I didn't know that was happening. Like, I didn't understand that. To me, it was like he was like my dad's age, and to me, it was like a fatherly like attention, and you know, just really giving me what they weren't giving me.
Right.
Just to turn it into, oh, by the way, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And Denise, do you know if was that kind of mental and emotional abuse fairly common in the parenting style within the group, or was it fairly unique to your situation?
Actually, oh, that is like a really tough. I would say there are definitely people who get away with it.
Okay.
I would actually say like more than the mental, emotional, I would say there's probably what I would consider like more physical abuse that probably happens and goes under the radar just because they're all for corporal punishment. So I would worry more about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
There is no spare the rod, spoil the child. It was use the rod.
Yes.
Wow. But Denise, just to reiterate, and I can speak for Melody on this, I know she'll agree with me. You were groomed. You were groomed. Your stepmother basically was grooming you without realizing she was grooming you for the guy that was going to be your predator. And that, and I will speak for Melody, and I know she's 1000% behind me in this. It was not, will never be, nor ever has been your fault. Any of the circumstance, how you ended up there, what transpired, what took place, what maybe have been felt or anything, was not, will never be your fault. And girl, we got you on that.
Thank you. And you know, it started like well before that. And you know what I mean? Like the grooming started well before the actual incident happened. And yeah, I look at it now with my own children, right? And I'm like, look at their ages, and I think, holy, somebody would be, you know what I mean? Like, it just blows me away, because when it came out, I was the one who told, and my father said, "Why did you let him do it?" So,
yeah,
you know.
Well, if you ever start having doubts and thinking that old style of thinking that it's your fault, just message one of us and we'll assure you that that's not true.
I will fangirl you, Denise, and so you are so pumped up, you are expecting autographs.
I will remember that, because I do go into cycles where I'm like, this is not good. So I may have to call you up and be like, help.
Yes.
She actually already answered my next question, Autumn, so you can skip ahead to number 5.
Okay, and you just mentioned it. You go into cycles. Since leaving, you have experienced something that you call guilt cycles, which I actually really like this word. Could you explain to us what it is like for you and how you work through it? What is a guilt cycle?
Okay, so I specifically have noticed this since I've actually physically gotten out. I believe they were happening before, and they probably do happen to people who are still indoctrinated, but they're not realizing what the cycle is. So once I got out, I realized quickly that I would go into this feeling of guilt and shame and fear. And I noticed it would be particular to a certain thing. So most recently, my particular guilt cycle was about not serving my husband in the way the cult would consider me to serve him, because that's what women are. That's what wives are. They're servants to their husbands. You do as you are told and do it good. My husband doesn't have that expectation. I just want everybody to be clear that he doesn't have that expectation of me. But because that's what I've been taught, and because they have mind control over you, it's like you build a tape, right? Like, and it just cycles. So once in a while, I think it's triggered. So like, if I've been sharing more and like coming out with my story more, then I'll get triggered, and the shame and the guilt come in it, and that tape will play and say, well, you're not a good Christian, you're not serving your husband right, you're gonna go to hell, yeah, like the whole thing. And then it's like a spiral. But I can see it, like there's two pieces of me. There's like the old cult piece, and then there's this independent, free will, free mind who's looking at what's happening and going, oh, okay, we got to do something about this, you know?
Yeah.
So basically how I work through it is to be honest about it. I try to let my friends know what's happening. I come out on TikTok about what's happening in my life. So I did share that with TikTok. And that helps to battle it. And also, like, I do a lot of really good self-care, make sure I'm really well taken care of, meeting all of my needs. If I need to sleep, to lie down, I do it. I try to surround myself with my worldly friends, you know, my support system. I try to make sure that they're around, talking to me, keeping me in the right spot, you know. So that's how I battle it.
Let me ask you this question. Can you share your TikTok, or do you choose not to at this time?
No, I totally would share it. It's actually like vice versa. But yeah, my TikTok it's called Story of Niece, and it's like story underline of underline, and then niece is Neese.
Let me hold this up. This is how you spell niece.
That's how you spell it. Yeah. So that's my TikTok, and it took a lot.
If I don't remember when I post this, I can actually, I think, post a link to your TikTok account underneath in the comments. So if I don't remember to do that, Denise, private message me and say, hey, Mel, you forgot to do that, and I'll do it.
Sure.
So I think that would be a good thing, because I think it will give a little more insight into your story, too. And actually people can follow through with where you're at now and what you're doing, too. So, and I think people will enjoy that. I think a lot of people will want to do that. That was a good idea, Autumn. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Every now and again.
And you know, another props off to you. And I know, Denise, you have a little bit of a unique situation, because mentally you started leaving in, I think, 2015. You said when you started getting counseling, you started realizing the situation you were in. But physically, actually leaving your cult, you're only a year out. And even for being 5 years out mentally, you're still, even to be recognized that and come up with a name and a title for these guilt cycles is, to me, I'm just like, I'm so impressed. I'm just like, wow, I've had those too. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what to call it. But it to me, it's a perfect title. It makes perfect sense. Did you read that in a book, or did you really just come up with that? That's impressive.
I mean, I don't know, maybe a thing somewhere, but I just came up for it because I just was like, okay, this is like actually a thing that's happening. What is it? And I was like, yeah, that's what it is. Just like this cycle I go through where the guilt comes back, and I'm like, hey, it's a guilt cycle. So now I can recognize it and be like, okay, it's just a guilt cycle. Okay, we're just gonna work through. It's gonna be okay. You know?
I just want to add one part, and I know when we had spoken before I said this, but I really want to reiterate this to you. I know that your latest one was you weren't being the dutiful, submissive, subservient wife. I just would like for people to understand that your husband is still in this organization, and that you have expressed multiple times to us just how much you love him, that you still make his meals, that you still do his laundry, that you still laugh with him and have fun with him and, you know, do all of this stuff with him. And yet you yourself are dealing with the harsh reality of all the abuse you went through because of this organization. And yet you are still with this man and very much in love with him. Denise, if that is not a subservient, submissive, loving, caring, wonderful wife, then by God, I don't want to know what is, because that speaks volume for your character.
Absolutely.
For you. And I just really wanted to reiterate that to you.
Yeah. Just so you know, you do have to give him credit. He does his own laundry.
Oh, well, good for him.
Listen, have him call Philip.
Give him his props. Give him his props where props are due. The man does his own laundry.
Yeah, and he helps me cook too. So, but
well,
I understand.
Right. But for the most part, though, and it's great that he actually jumps in, because Melody and I, Mel, I know you've been what I'm about to say. Women do this, men don't do this. Men keep their shoes off and sit in the chair. So that even speaks more volumes to the relationship that you and your husband have.
Well, it explains to me why you're still together and why you still love the man.
Yes. Yes. So very good for that.
So, Denise, I know that while you were part of this group that you managed to get a higher education, and that is not very common for people that are in your cult. Can you walk us through how you were able to do that and how that played out?
Sure. So, my husband actually had something tragic happen to him, and he became disabled in 2000, and it was probably the most difficult thing we've been through besides our children dying. We've had the children die. But otherwise, it was very difficult because men are supposed to support their family, and all of a sudden, you know, he's having this tragic thing happen and he can't. So I was expected by the state to get a job so that we could get help, because you can't just sit, you know. And anyway, it took 3 jobs for me to meet their requirements. And as I was doing these 3 jobs at once, right after I had a baby, yes, it just came to me that I can't keep doing that. I can't keep like hitting myself over the head trying to get enough hours with 3 jobs. I need something more. So the state considers if you're in school to meet the requirements. So I decided to go back to college at that time and pursue a degree in applied sciences, and then I became a registered nurse.
Oh, that's amazing. And did you have to get special permission from the organization to do that, or did you just kind of do it?
I probably should have. I wasn't a very good Christian and did a lot of things without permission.
So you just took it upon yourself. You're like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, our family needed to survive, you know.
Absolutely. No. Props to you. That's impressive. I wanted to make sure we told that part of your story because I think it's significant. We actually are down to about 5 minutes here. So I'm going to have Autumn go ahead and ask the next question, Denise, but we're not going to answer it until we go into part 2. We're going to do that hook thing again. It seems to be working well for us. So Autumn, you go ahead and shoot with that next question, and we'll come back to part 2.
Denise, can you share with us how many children and grandchildren you have, and what part of the cult played into this aspect of your life? Also, I think I heard this correctly. You have had the death of 3 children. Would you mind sharing that with us when we come back?
Okay.
All right.
So Denise is going to answer that question when we come back with part 2, so don't miss it. Come back and see us on part 2. Thank you.